For the last 20 years has used helicopters, airplanes for marijuana eradication, that kind of stuff. What's your stance on that vis-a-vis the drones and the analogy between the similarities and the differences?
Sure. It's a very good question. One would certainly see a lot. I mean, from our mind, obviously, the idea of using aerial surveillance for law enforcement is not a new one. We think the difference here is sort of the difference between a pop gun and a machine gun. Drones can fly in much larger numbers for much less money. I mean, it's actually, you know, it's very expensive to fly an airplane or a helicopter, and it's an enormous practical limiting factor, much more important in many ways than what the law says is what you reasonably can do. And drones remove those limitations. They also, you know, so you can buy many more drones just for the cost of a small airplane. You can deploy them more broadly, and you can also, you know, and this is sort of a separate but related trend, you can put a lot more powerful sensing technology on than you could even 10 years ago or 15 years ago. I mean, if you look at just the power of the technology in your cell phone and how good a camera that is versus the camera you had 5 or 6 years ago, imagine that same surveillance power on a drone. And unfortunately, the Fourth Amendment rulings in this area are pretty bad, candidly. The court has said in the past that even a helicopter that hovers over someone's house and peers in the broken window of a greenhouse doesn't violate the Fourth Amendment. So if there's an open window, almost you can look in someone's house. And so I think what we'll need is basically a statutory regime that makes clear that if it's on private property, if it's in a private space, you need a warrant. If it's in public, you know, from the ACLU point of view, we'd like to see at least reasonable suspicion. You know, get a judge's approval, have a particular person in mind. All of this with the idea that drones should not be surveilling all of us all the time. They're an appropriate law enforcement tool to surveil a particular person for a particular reason. And, you know, you should have that reason and you should be able to articulate it to a judge. So, you know, I think that, and that's a common theme among all these things. We're not, you know, shooting up the computers and saying, no new technologies. I mean, I love technology. I kind of got into this because I'm a little bit of a geek like that. I'm always the first guy who's trying out like all these different things, and I come back and tell my coworkers, no, that was no good, or that was a good one. So we're not saying no to technology. Technology is great. The idea is that we should be able to have our technology, but also have legal protections so that we can use it without worrying about where the information is going and giving us the control over it.
I'd also like to add, with regard to drones and what makes them different than the standard helicopters and what have you, is the ability and amount of information that those drones can record and then share with the federal government. Because I think, as Chris has painted the picture, what I like to call is the federal government's unquenchable thirst for even the most mundane facts and circumstances of our life.